The Chelsea owner, Roman Abramovich, has become the latest Russian oligarch to have his assets frozen by the UK government as part of sanctions over the war in Ukraine. In a statement outlining those sanctions, the government said Abramovich is associated with a person who is or has been involved in destabilizing Ukraine and undermining and threatening the territorial integrity, sovereignty and independence of Ukraine, namely Vladimir Putin, with whom Abramovich had a close relationship for decades. Well, joining me now is Kaveh Sohekov from Sky Sports News. Kaveh, thanks a lot for joining us. A lot of reaction on social media to this. And the top question is, what does this mean for Chelsea?
Well, look, effectively, Chelsea are in limbo. They're only operating because they have a special licence from the government, because the government say they are a significant cultural asset. So basically what that means is these sanctions are designed to stop Roman Abramovich making any money in the United Kingdom. But obviously, he owns Chelsea Football Club, and the government don't want to get involved in a situation where they shut down Chelsea. So they've given the club a special licence, and the licence is going to be in place until the 31st of May. And effectively, what it means is that they can carry on playing games, fulfilling their fixtures, but there are a lot of things that they can't do, and there are a lot of things that they can do. So they can play games, their games can be shown on TV, they can continue to receive TV money, they can carry on paying their players, they can carry on paying day-to-day bills. But the things they can't do, they can't sell any more tickets to their games at home. So the only people who will be able to go to Stamford Bridge to watch them are people who already have tickets or people who have season tickets. They also will not be able to sell any merchandise, so their club shops will have to close. And also there are lots of details about how much money they're allowed to spend. So for instance, at home games, they're allowed to spend up to £500,000 per game, providing stewarding, security, and also refreshments. So you'll still be able to buy food and drink at Stamford Bridge. When it comes to away games, they're only allowed to spend up to £20,000 on travel. Now, I think that's going to be pretty difficult for a Premier League club to stick to, because these clubs, their players are used to travelling everywhere.
How much do they usually spend?
Well, I think, you know, ballpark figure £30,000, but when they play, a lot of times they fly by private jet to games. They have luxury coaches. When it comes to Champions League games in Europe, they stay at the best hotels. They have their own chartered plane to fly them everywhere. So that, I'm struggling to see how they're going to be able to stick to that. But that is what it says in the licence. And when it comes to the future of the club, I mean, there's so many question marks because, you know, I know some Chelsea players, they will be thinking today, my God, what is happening? How am I going to be paid in the future? Am I going to get paid?
It goes up to May, did you say, this licence?
It goes up to May, but the government say that it's being continually reviewed. So that is when it is in place at the moment, but that could change. As far as the players are concerned, very uncertain. They don't know what's going to happen to them in the future. A lot of them will be on their phone to their agents, maybe thinking Chelsea's not the right club for me, I should be moving somewhere else. Roman Abramovich is not going to be running the club. We're not going to have as much money as we used to. As far as Roman Abramovich himself is concerned, of course, he has been on the back foot from day one. As soon as it became apparent that there was the threat of sanctions, he's been trying to sort something out with Chelsea.
He put steps in place, didn't he? What did he do?
Well, the first thing he did is he came up with a scheme where he apparently was going to give away control of the club but retain ownership. And the control was going to be handed over to the 6 trustees who run Chelsea's charitable arm, the Chelsea Foundation. The only problem with that is that under UK charity laws, that was not allowed. And also the trustees didn't want to get involved in running a business as big as Chelsea, especially a business that was owned by a Russian oligarch. So that plan didn't work. A few days later, he released a statement saying that, OK, I'm going to sell Chelsea and I'm going to give all the money away.
So, yeah, he said he was going to give it to...
I mean, which was absolutely incredible because Chelsea, most people think Chelsea are worth somewhere between 1.5 and £3 billion. Billion pounds. So for a businessman to come out and say, I'm going to sell it and give the money away, and he said, I'm going to give the money to a foundation that I'm going to set up. And this foundation is going to benefit the victims, all the victims of the war in Ukraine. Wasn't clear how he was going to be able to set up a bank account, because obviously he's a Russian oligarch who's linked to Vladimir Putin. It wasn't clear how he was going to be able to get the money, how he was going to be able to sell Chelsea when so many Russian banks and businesses are under sanctions. So that plan doesn't look like it's going to work either, because the government have said that this licence means that he will not be able to sell Chelsea for the time being. So the sale is off. But there is a way around it. The government have said that if he wants to sell it, as long as he can prove that the proceeds are not going to him, the government may be able to issue a new licence which would allow the club to be sold. But he would have to prove absolutely and satisfy the government that he wasn't getting the proceeds. So the sale looks to be off. It looks the club are in total limbo, and effectively they're really being run by the government.
Yeah, because that was my next question. Who's running Chelsea?
Well, they are running. The only reason they're operating is that they have this special licence from the government.
Has never been issued before. I'm assuming it's.
I've never heard of anything happening like this. What I think the problem the government had is they didn't want to take over control of Chelsea, because if they seize all Roman Abramovich's assets, it would effectively mean that the government would be running Chelsea and the taxpayer would be subsidising Chelsea, because Chelsea lose a lot of money. Last year, they lost something like £150 million. So if we had the situation whereby the government was running Chelsea, you would have taxpayers coming out and saying, why are my taxes going towards paying Romelu Lukaku £300,000 a week? I'm a taxpayer. I don't want my money going to pay these millionaire footballers
who fly on private jets
around the world. So I think what the government have done is quite clever, is they've managed to sort of take a step back and distance themselves from owning and running Chelsea. But really, the only reason Chelsea is continuing to operate and the only reason they'll be able to play their game against Norwich tonight is because they have a licence to carry on playing, which has been issued by the government, and the government have made it clear they can take that licence away anytime they want.
When he said he was going to sell it, was there any interest in it?
There's been lots of interest, but the whole issue has been is, from a PR point of view, it was great for Roman Abramovich to say, I'm going to sell Chelsea and I'm going to give £3 billion away to the victims of this war. Although he never made it clear whether it was just going to be, the money was going to Ukrainians or Russians as well in Ukraine. So I had the feeling that it was a bit of a PR move as far as he was concerned. I've never heard of any businessman ever selling something worth £3 billion and giving all the proceeds away. As to interest, there was a lot of interest. We know of at least 10 parties who were interested in buying Chelsea. 10, but none of them were willing to pay £3 billion. Most of the interest came from the US. Historically, the kind of people who are interested in buying Premier League clubs have been from Russia, have been from China.
Because they have the cash, right?
Yeah, and also it helps them soften their image and project soft power around the world. A lot of interest from the Middle East as well. In this case, there's been virtually no interest, obviously, from Russia. There's no interest from China, because Chinese government have clamped down on foreign investment. Very little interest from the Middle East. There was some interest in Europe and also a lot of interest from American sports investors who want to buy Premier League clubs. We've already got 8 Premier League clubs who are owned or co-owned by Americans. And I think in the future, we're probably looking at Chelsea being owned by a US businessman, sports investor, but that could be months and months away.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting tonight. Against Norwich, you say they're playing?
Norwich, yeah.
Covered, thanks a lot. Fascinating. Thank you.